What's a fiscal year? I don't know. There are these people, they make stuff. It's before Fat Tuesday, a certain recipe. You can get into this with what tradition is, and that's healthy because in society, the leaders and the people in charge of organizations, they're handling the cash cow. And the more that is a diversion with looking at a cow covered in cash, you forget what it actually is. And so there's these things where I saw on a video last night, this guy on LSD. This guy was on LSD and he was just making blanket statement after blanket statement as the cops brought him to the hospital, and it clearly was unhinged and clearly it wasn't making sense, but subliminally to him it probably was the place where he was in, it was making perfect sense. And so I never want this to be an attribute of myself. Hawk, where I've been told before, it's you're mumbling, you don't know what you're saying. And so in order to not be that, you got to start making results in parallel. But the more that, like, looking at math and science, it's you got to go with these things that are just like a myofibrous. If you take a whole bunch of paper clips and you align them like a zipper together, this is what a myofibrous is. And so there's these patterns, they inject outwards and inwards. They start acting up, and this is driven by an overriding force in gluons. So when you're putting like these two things together, making an align right, you know, people at the bottom of the globe, when they're walking around, they don't feel any like tension of like being upside down. And so is this like where there's small degrees of this? Because at the Mile High City, you walk around and your ears will pop. So can you make these like things that are blatantly obvious, but then draw them to just a bit of sentimental, where their fine scalings would be that of obvious? People near the equator with their melanin, different than if you are walking in Antarctica. Sure, signs of it in there. The same thing as like where I heard a riddle is like this bird drops into a hole. You don't get it out with sticks. You slowly sprinkle sand on top of it until it jumps on top of enough sand to get out. So I described the guys with to address handlers. I've noticed lately that there's a phenomenon with everyone as they're accepting things that are called tumblers. Now, when I was growing up in the 90s, I knew some coal miners, and they carried a canteen or a thermos. It's just a gratified version of both of these. So if you're doing the wrong thing and profiting off it. And so this is part of my character where people leaving their car, when they take a lot of time and they leave their car, I'm curious about why can't they just leave their car? And it's then when people choose to leave and they are choosing to leave, it's totally like a power trip of me being OP. But that's why it's funny, is because that's just the physical attribute, piquing curiosity in these things. But verbally, what I do is a lot of people, like, they go and they explain the stories in their lives, and then once they get like all the stories that you've heard already, where do they go from there? It's usually no place good. But me, I'm gonna just do like a handful of these things that I think are the most prominent things that I saw in my past. There's boil it down to like 3 or 4, maybe even just 2. and then just repeat these over and over because they have significant meaning. Where I've seen two things happen: people, lives get end short, and then the next day they're not there. What happened to this person? That person, and then the other case where someone gets stuck inside of a permanent recycle, and so they're unable to get out of it. This is what I saw growing up in high school. It's not a coma, it's like a step above a coma, but you're still in it. He thought he was a glass of orange juice, and to this day I think that's still the case. Why I'm mentioning these two scenarios is because just additions to why I would be trying to figure out by repeating the same story of what I learned in the past over and over again would be to justify those two instances that are unjustifiable. And so there was a tomboy, and that was like in the 90s, that's what they were, and they actually were tomboys. So this, or a tom girl, that's what they, a guy who's feminine or a girl who's masculine. Girl who's masculine said, like, you gotta say the word girl. And me, I had a speech impediment, so I was working on this already. It's probably how I remember it. And then she's like, you gotta like close your throat, keep your mouth shut, and then if you put your hand over your mouth, of course stick your pinky out, and then it's gonna sound more like, all sound when you boil it down can be thought out as just like a white noise or this synthetic like laser pitch sound. If you drop like an object down a tunnel, it makes like a laser sound.